I spent 33 years being the safety net my family relied on. But the moment I tried to catch myself, the net was cut. I thought booking a solo trip to the Oregon coast was just a vacation. I did not realize it was an act of war. My sister Brianna knew I was leaving, and she knew exactly how to prove that for the reliable daughter. Saying no is the most dangerous thing you can do. The confirmation email hit my inbox at exactly 4:17 in the afternoon on a rainy Tuesday, and for the first time in 18 months, I felt my lungs actually expand. Booking confirmed. Seacliff Harbor, Oregon. 5 nights, 1 person. I stared at the screen of my work laptop, the blue light reflecting off my glasses, and felt a physical wave of relief crash over me so hard I almost had to grip the edge of my desk. It was done. It was paid for. It was non-refundable. For most people, booking a domestic flight and a small rental cottage is a mundane administrative task. For me, Haley Watson, 33 years old, and the unofficial emotional janitor for the entire Watson-Hale bloodline, it felt like an act of rebellion. I minimized the window before my manager, Dave, could walk past and ask me to expedite the quarterly review for the 3rd time that week. I worked at Northline Creative, a mid-sized marketing firm where I had cultivated a reputation for being the person who never said no, never missed a deadline, and never complained when the workload of 2 people was quietly shifted onto my desk. It was the same reputation I held in my family. Reliable Haley, steady Haley, the one who did not need maintenance, the one who did not have crises. But the truth was, I was not steady. I was hollowed out. The last year had been a grinder. I had navigated my mother's hip surgery recovery, managing her appointments and her groceries while working 50-hour weeks. I had covered the deposit for my younger brother's apartment when his roommates bailed. Money I had yet to see returned, and I had spent nearly every other weekend at my sister Brianna's house, watching her 2 children, Leo and Sophie, while she navigated a divorce that seemed to reset its drama counter to 0 every Monday morning. I loved my niece and nephew. Leo was 7, a quiet builder of Lego empires, and Sophie was 4, a chaotic whirlwind of glitter and sticky hands. But I had become the default backup plan. If the nanny called out, call Haley. If Brianna needed a mental health day, call Haley. If there was a school half-day that was missed on the calendar, Aunt Haley will leave work early. I had earned this trip. I repeated that to myself as I saved the itinerary to a private folder on my desktop labeled simply October. I had earned the silence of the Oregon coast. I had earned the right to wake up for 5 consecutive days without an alarm clock or a crisis text message. I began the process of locking down my exit strategy with the precision of a military operation. I submitted my PTO request through the HR portal, double-checking the dates. October 14th to October 19th, approved. I contacted the cat sitter, a lovely older woman named Mrs. Higgins from down the hall, and prepaid her in cash so there would be no loose ends. Most importantly, I told almost no one. I shared the itinerary with exactly 1 person, Mara Ellison, my best friend from college and the only person in my life who consistently asked, "How are you?" and actually waited for the answer, "Do not tell them until you are at the gate." Mara had texted back immediately, "Do not give them a window to insert an emergency." She was right, of course, but I was not going to be that paranoid. I was an adult. I was allowed to leave the state. I decided to tell my mother a week later. During our Sunday phone call, I kept it casual, burying the news between a story about my cat knocking over a plant and a question about her physical therapy. "I am actually heading out of town for a few days next month," I said, keeping my voice light. "Just a solo trip to the coast. I need to clear my head." There was a pause on the line. I could hear the faint hum of her television in the background. "Oh," my mother said. Her tone was not happy for me. It was calculating. "By yourself? Is that safe?" "It is perfectly safe. Mom, I just need sleep." "Well," she said, exhaling a sigh that sounded like a tire losing pressure, "I suppose you have been working hard. Does Brianna know?" The question made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Why would Brianna need to know? I was not her employee. I have not mentioned it. I said, I figured I would just tell everyone closer to the date. You should tell her, my mother said, her voice dropping into that conspiratorial register she used when she was managing the family emotions. She has been having a really hard time lately with the ex. She was saying just yesterday how overwhelmed she feels. I gripped my phone tighter. Mom, I am burnt out too. That is why I am going. Of course, she said quickly, retreating. Of course you are. Just let her know so she does not feel left out. I hung up 10 minutes later with a knot in my stomach. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Brianna was my sister. She was 36 years old. She was charismatic, beautiful, and capable of charming a room service waiter into giving her a free meal. But she was also perpetually the victim of circumstances that were mysteriously never her fault. I waited 2 days. I did not want to send a text that could be misconstrued, so I figured I would mention it the next time we spoke. Brianna beat me to it. It was Wednesday evening. I had just walked into my apartment, kicking off my heels and dropping my bag on the entryway bench, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Brianna. Mom says you are going on a vacation? I stared at the screen. My mother had lasted less than 72 hours. The information pipeline was efficient as always. I typed back, Hey, yes, I just booked a few days in Oregon. Really need to unplug. 3 bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a response came through. Must be nice to just up and leave. I felt a flash of irritation. Hot and sharp. It was nice. It was also paid for with money I saved by not buying a new car and time I accrued by working weekends. I decided not to engage with the passive aggression. I typed, It should be relaxing. How are the kids? She did not reply to that. The real strike came the following morning. I was at my desk at Northline, trying to salvage a slide deck for a client who hated the color blue, when my phone rang. Brianna's face flashed on the screen. I answered, keeping my voice professional. Hey, everything okay? Hey, she said. Her voice was brisk, the tone she used when she was in project management mode. Listen, I am glad I caught you. I was looking at the dates Mom mentioned for your little trip. The 14th through the 19th, right? Yes, I said slowly. Why? Okay, so that is actually a huge problem, she said, as if informing me that a meeting room was double booked. I have this massive work obligation that weekend. It is a mandatory retreat for the leadership team. If I do not go, it looks terrible for my promotion track. And Gavin is going to be out of town for his cousin's wedding. So I am totally stuck. I waited for the question, but it did not come. So, she continued, breezing past the silence, I need you to take the kids from Friday night until Monday morning. I can drop them off at your place, or you can stay at mine. Mine is probably easier since all their stuff is there. I sat up straighter in my ergonomic chair. The audacity was breathtaking. She was not asking. She was assigning. Brianna, I said, keeping my voice steady. I cannot do that. I have non-refundable tickets. I am leaving that Friday morning. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Not a silence of understanding, but a silence of recalibration. Haley, she said, and her voice dropped an octave, becoming softer, more fragile. You do not understand. I cannot miss this. This is my career. I have been fighting tooth and nail to get some stability back after the divorce. If I say no to this retreat, they are going to look at me like I am just another unreliable single mom. I felt the familiar pull of guilt, the magnetic force that had kept me in her orbit for years. I knew how hard she worked. I knew the divorce had been messy, but then I looked at the sticky note on my monitor where I had written Seacliff Harbor. I understand it is important, I said, but I literally cannot be there. I will be in Oregon. I have booked the flights. I have booked the rental. Cancel it, she said. The command was so blunt it almost made me laugh. Excuse me? Cancel the trip. Haley, you can go to the coast any weekend. You are single. You do not have kids. You have zero responsibilities compared to what I am dealing with. I am asking you for one weekend of help in the middle of a crisis. It was not a crisis. It was a scheduling conflict. I am not canceling my trip. I said, surprising myself with the hardness of my own voice. I have not had a vacation in 2 years. I am burnt out. Bree, I need this. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Wow. Okay, so you are really leaving when I need help? You are choosing a vacation over your family? I am choosing to take care of myself for 5 days. I said, look, what about Tessa? She has watched the kids before. She is great with them. Tessa charges $20 an hour. Brianna snapped. I cannot afford 3 days of round-the-clock care right now. You know things are tight. I took a deep breath. I was about to do something I knew I would regret. But I was trying to be reasonable. I will pay for Tessa, I said. I will cover the cost of the sitter for the weekend, as a gift, so you can go to your retreat and I can go on my trip. It was a generous offer. It was more than generous. It was enabling. But I wanted to buy my freedom. No, Brianna said instantly. I am not leaving my children with a neighbor for 3 days while you go sit on a beach and drink wine. That is not happening. Family steps up. Haley, that is what we do. I would do it for you. The lie hung in the air between us. We both knew she would not do it for me. When I had the flu last year and needed someone to drop off Gatorade, she told me she was too busy with Sophie's dance recital. I cannot do it. Brianna, I said, my answer is no. You need to find another arrangement. Ask Gavin to skip the wedding. Ask Mom. But I'm not canceling my trip. The silence that followed was long and heavy. I expected her to yell. I expected her to cry. She did neither. Okay, she said. The word was flat, devoid of emotion. Okay? I asked. Wary. Yeah. Okay. If that is where you are at, then that is where you are at. I guess I just misunderstood where I stood on your priority list. Bree, do not do that. Have a nice trip. Haley, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. It felt too easy. Brianna did not surrender. She regrouped. Her calm was not acceptance. It was the eye of the hurricane. I tried to focus on my work for the rest of the afternoon. But my concentration was shot. I kept waiting for the follow-up text, the angry paragraph, the guilt trip meme. Nothing came. By the time I left the office at 6:30, the silence felt ominous. I drove home through the rain, listening to a podcast about mindfulness that was failing entirely to make me mindful. I heated up leftover Thai food and sat on my couch, trying to force myself to feel excited about Oregon. I pulled up photos of the cottage I had rented, a small A-frame with a view of the gray Pacific. I tried to visualize myself there, drinking coffee on the deck. Then my phone lit up. It was a notification from the extended family group chat, a chat titled Watson Clan that included my mother, Brianna, my brother, 2 aunts, and 3 cousins. Brianna had sent a photo. It was a picture of her 2 kids, Leo and Sophie, sitting at their kitchen table looking sad over plates of spaghetti. The caption read, "Tough conversations tonight about why Mommy has to work so hard and why we do not always have the village we think we do. Breaks my heart that they have to learn early that people show their true colors when it is inconvenient to help. Single mom life." My stomach dropped. Immediately, the responses started rolling in from my aunts. Aunt Linda, "Oh, honey, sending prayers. You are doing such a good job. Who let you down?" Aunt Sarah, "It takes a village. Bree, we are here for you in spirit. Some people just don't get what sacrifice means." Brianna responded with a single heart emoji. She had not named me. She did not have to. The vagueness was the weapon. If I jumped in and defended myself, I would look guilty. If I stayed silent, the narrative would cement itself around her martyr complex. I put the phone down, face down, on the coffee table. My appetite for the pad thai was gone. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a direct call. It was my mother. I debated not answering. I knew exactly how this conversation would go, but avoiding it would only make me look like I was hiding. "Hi, Mom," I said, answering on the 3rd ring. "Haley," my mother said. Her voice was tight, anxious. "I just got off the phone with Brianna. She is hysterical. She did not sound hysterical when I spoke to her. I said, she sounded calculated. She is crying her eyes out. Mom said, she says she is going to lose her job if she does not go to this retreat. Haley, you cannot let that happen. I am not letting anything happen, I said, walking into my kitchen to pour a glass of water just to have something to do with my hands. She has options. I offered to pay for a sitter. She refused. A sitter? Mom asked, as if I had suggested leaving the children with a pack of wolves. You cannot leave children that young with a stranger for a weekend. They need family. They need stability. Tessa is not a stranger. She lives next door. She has babysat them a dozen times. It is not the same. Mom insisted, look, I know you want to go on your trip. I get it. But maybe you can reschedule? The airline will give you a credit, right? No, Mom, they will not. And even if they did, I do not want to. Haley, please. My mother's voice shifted from commanding to pleading. Do not be stubborn. You promised you would help her out more this year. I froze. I never promised that. I said I would help when I could. This is a time I cannot. Brianna said you told her months ago that you were free in October. Mom said, she said she planned this retreat specifically because she thought you were available. Now she feels like you are pulling the rug out from under her. I felt the room spin slightly. This was the gaslighting. This was the rewriting of history. I never said that. I said, my voice rising, I never told her I was free in October. I just booked this trip on Tuesday. She is lying. Mom, do not call your sister a liar. Mom snapped. She is under a lot of pressure. She might have misunderstood, but she is relying on you. Please, just this once. For me? I cannot take the stress of her losing her job. My hip is throbbing just thinking about it. The manipulation was seamless. If I said no to Brianna, I was hurting Mom. If I hurt Mom, I was a bad daughter. Mom, I said, forcing myself to lower my volume. I love you, and I love the kids, but I'm going to Oregon. I am not discussing this anymore. Haley, I hung up. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, shaking. I had done it. I had said no. I had held the boundary, but it did not feel like a victory. It felt like I had just detonated a bomb in my own living room. My phone buzzed again. Another message in the group chat. Cousin Mike. Family comes first. Always. Sad to see priorities get mixed up. I stared at the message. Mike lived 3 states away and had not visited his own parents in 2 years. Yet here he was, weighing in on my moral character. I sat down at my kitchen island and put my head in my hands. The guilt was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. A voice in my head, the voice Brianna and my mother had cultivated for 3 decades, whispered that I was being selfish, that 5 days of peace were not worth this much chaos, that it would be easier to just cancel the flight, eat the cost, and drive to Brianna's house on Friday. It would be easier. It would stop the texts. It would make my mother stop sighing. It would make Brianna smile and call me the best sister ever. But then I remembered the last time. The time I canceled a dentist appointment to pick up Sophie because Brianna had a migraine, only to see her tagged in a brunch photo on Instagram 2 hours later. I remembered the time I loaned her $2,000 for car repairs that turned into a new designer handbag. And when I asked for the money back, she told me I was being transactional. This was not about a weekend. This was about ownership. She believed she owned my time. She believed my life was a resource she could harvest whenever her own garden ran dry. I lifted my head and looked at my phone. The screen was dark now, but the notifications were piling up behind the black glass. I realized then that this was not going to blow over. Brianna had reacted too calmly on the phone. She had escalated to Mom too quickly. She was seeding the ground with the extended family too efficiently. She was building a case. I unlocked my phone. I did not reply to Mike. I did not reply to the aunts. Instead, I opened a new note on my phone. I typed the date. September 24th. I wrote, 4:15 p.m. Brianna called, demanded I cancel trip for her retreat. I refused. Offered to pay for Tessa. She refused. I wrote, 6:30 p.m. Brianna posts in family chat implying I abandoned her. I wrote, 7 p.m. Mom called. Claimed Brianna said I promised availability in October. False. I went to my text thread with Brianna. I took a screenshot of our conversation from earlier in the week where I told her about the trip. I took a screenshot of her "must be nice" text. I went to the group chat. I took screenshots of the passive-aggressive comments, capturing the timestamps. I created a folder in my cloud drive. I named it Documentation. I did not know why. Exactly. I felt the need to do this. It felt paranoid. It felt like something a lawyer would do. Not a sister. But a cold instinct had woken up in the back of my brain. A survival mechanism I had not used since high school. If she was going to tell a story about me, I was going to keep the raw footage. I was not doing this to win. I was doing this because for the first time in my life, I realized that saying no to my family was not just a choice. It was a threat, and threats are met with retaliation. I poured the rest of the water into the sink. It was 9 o'clock. I had work tomorrow. I had a trip to prepare for. I was going to Seacliff Harbor, and I was going to leave my phone on Do Not Disturb. But as I walked to my bedroom, I checked my email one last time. There was nothing from Brianna, nothing from Mom. But there was a notification from LinkedIn. Brianna Hale has viewed your profile. I frowned. Brianna never went on LinkedIn. She thought it was boring corporate posturing. Why was she looking at my professional profile on a Wednesday night? I clicked on it. She had viewed it 14 minutes ago. A small shiver of unease went through me. I told myself I was overreacting. She was probably just checking to see if I had updated my job title or something innocuous. I plugged my phone into the charger on my nightstand and turned off the lights. I lay in the dark, listening to the rain hit the window. I closed my eyes and tried to picture the ocean. Gray waves, salt air, the sound of seagulls. But all I could see was Brianna's face, cool and composed, saying, "Okay," and I knew. With a certainty that made my stomach turn, that the weekend was not the only thing she was planning to ruin. The next 2 weeks were a study in psychological trench warfare. Silence from Brianna. Silence from Mom, except for short, clipped texts about the weather or the cat, devoid of any warmth. The family group chat remained active, but I was ghosted within it. They posted photos of dinners I was not invited to. They shared inside jokes I was not part of. It was the shunning phase, punishment by exclusion. I kept my head down. I worked hard at Northline. I finalized the marketing deck for the difficult client and received a rare email of praise from the VP of Operations. I printed it out and put it in my physical file. A small talisman of competence in a world that was trying to tell me I was selfish. I packed my suitcase 3 days early. I bought travel-sized toiletries. I bought a new paperback novel, a thick mystery about a woman who disappears. On the morning of Friday, October 14th, I woke up at 5 o'clock. My flight was at 9. I had a cab scheduled for 6:30. I showered, dressed in comfortable leggings and a sweater, and made a travel mug of coffee. I felt a jittery excitement mixed with dread. I kept checking my phone, expecting a last-minute crisis, but the phone was quiet. Maybe I was wrong. I thought as I zipped up my suitcase, maybe she just accepted it. Maybe she found another sitter. Maybe she realized she was being unreasonable. The buzzer to my apartment rang at 6:15. I smiled. The cab was early. I grabbed my bag, slung my purse over my shoulder, and walked to the intercom. "Hello?" I said. "Haley. It's me. Buzz me in." It was not the cab driver. It was Brianna. My hand froze on the button. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Brianna?" I said. "What are you doing here?" "Buzz me in." "Haley, it is freezing out here and I have the kids." The kids. I felt a surge of panic so acute it made my vision blur for a second. She had brought them. She had actually brought them. "Brianna," I said, my voice shaking. "I am leaving." "My cab is coming in 15 minutes. Just buzz me in," she said, her voice sharp and metallic through the speaker. "We need to talk." I knew I should not do it. I knew I should leave the receiver on the hook, grab my bag, go out the back exit, and wait for the cab on the corner. But I was conditioned. Decades of training kicked in. You do not leave your sister on the street. You do not leave children in the cold. I pressed the button. I heard the heavy click of the lobby door unlocking. I opened my apartment door and stood in the hallway, waiting. I could hear the elevator gears grinding. I could hear the ding as it arrived on the 4th floor. The doors slid open. Brianna stepped out. She looked impeccable. She was wearing a beige trench coat, her hair blown out in soft waves, her makeup flawless. She looked like the CEO of a company that manufactured guilt. Behind her, looking tired and confused, were Leo and Sophie. They were in their pajamas, wearing coats over them. Leo was dragging a small rolling suitcase with a cartoon dinosaur on it. Sophie was clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Hi, Aunt Haley," Leo mumbled, rubbing his eyes. My heart broke instantly. They had been dragged out of bed. They were props in her play. I did not look at Brianna. I knelt down on the hallway carpet. "Hey guys," I said softly. "I am so happy to see you. Look at those cool pajamas." Sophie ran to me and hugged my neck. "You smell like coffee," she whispered. I hugged her back. Tight. "I love you, sweetie." I stood up and looked at Brianna. Her face was a mask of calm. "What are you doing?" I asked, keeping my voice low so the kids would not hear the anger in it. "I told you," she said, breezing past me into my apartment as if she lived there. "I have that retreat. I have to go." She walked into my living room and set her designer tote bag on my pristine white couch. "Brianna." I followed her in, leaving the door open. "I told you no. I am leaving. My cab is coming in 10 minutes. I am going to the airport." She turned to face me. She looked around the apartment, noting the suitcase by the door. "Well, you can't go," she said simply. I stared at her. It was not a request. It was a statement of fact, as if she were discussing the weather. "I am going." I said, "I am walking out that door in 10 minutes. If you leave the kids here, you are leaving them alone." "You wouldn't do that," she said. She smiled, a small, tight smile that did not reach her eyes. "You are not the kind of person who abandons children. Haley, we both know that." She was weaponizing my decency. She was betting her entire strategy on the fact that I was a better person than she was. "I am not abandoning them," I said, my voice trembling with rage. You are the one dumping them on someone who told you repeatedly she would not be here. I have to work." "Haley," her voice cracked, finally showing a fissure of emotion. "Why do you not get that? I am doing this for them. I need this promotion." "I need the money." "Then take the money I offered you," I hissed. "Take the money and hire Tessa." "I told you. I am not leaving them with a stranger." She was shouting now. Sophie started to whimper. I took a deep breath. I looked at the clock on the wall. 6:25. "Brianna," I said, lowering my voice to a deadly calm. "I am going to say this one more time. I am leaving. You have to take them with you, or you have to call Tessa right now. But I am getting in that cab." She stared at me. She seemed to be assessing me, looking for the crack, the crumble. She was used to me folding. She was waiting for the sigh, the shoulder slump, the okay, fine, just this once. I did not slump. I stood straight. I held her gaze. She blinked. "Okay," she said softly. The word again, that terrifying, empty word. "You are really doing this?" she asked. "You are really kicking your niece and nephew out on the street?" "I am not kicking them out. You are taking them home." "Fine." She grabbed her tote bag. "Come on, kids. Aunt Haley is too busy for us. She has a very important vacation to go on." The sarcasm dripped like acid. Leo looked at me, his eyes wide. "Are you mad at us?" he asked. "No." I dropped to my knees again, ignoring Brianna. "Leo, look at me. I am never mad at you. I love you so much. I just have to go on a trip, okay? But I will bring you back a present. I promise." He looked at his mother, then back at me. "Okay." Brianna ushered them out into the hallway. She did not look back at me. She marched them to the elevator and pressed the button. I stood in my doorway, watching them. As the elevator doors opened, Brianna turned her head. You are making me do something I don't want to do, she said. The doors closed. I stood there for a full minute, listening to the silence. My heart was racing so fast I felt dizzy. I had done it. I had survived the ambush. My phone buzzed. It was the cab driver. I am outside. I grabbed my suitcase. I locked my door. I walked to the elevator. I felt sick. I felt like a criminal. But underneath the nausea, there was a tiny, hard kernel of pride. I had protected my boundary. I got into the cab. To the airport. Please, I said. I checked my phone. No text from Brianna. No text from Mom. Maybe it was over. Maybe she had bluffed, and I had called it, and now she would just have to deal with her own life. I allowed myself to relax. Just a fraction. I watched the city blur past the rain-streaked window. I thought about the ocean. At 7:15, as I was standing in the security line at the airport, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was not from family. It was from work. Sender, HR, Northline Creative. Subject, urgent, professional conduct inquiry. I frowned. Why was HR emailing me at 7:15 on a Friday when I was on PTO? I opened the email. Dear Haley, we have received a formal complaint regarding your conduct and immediate availability. Serious concerns have been raised regarding your stability and professionalism that require immediate discussion. Please be available for a mandatory Zoom call with myself and the Director of Human Resources at 9 a.m. today. This matter is time-sensitive. Regards, Karen Miller, HR Manager. I stared at the screen, the noise of the airport, the announcements, the rolling suitcases. The chatter faded into a dull roar. A complaint? About my stability? I had never had a complaint in 5 years. I was the model employee. And then I saw the time, 9 o'clock, exactly when my flight was scheduled to take off. If I took the call, I missed the flight. If I missed the call, I looked unstable and insubordinate. I thought about Brianna's words in the hallway. You are making me do something I don't want to do. She hadn't just come to drop off the kids. She had come to verify I was actually leaving. And the moment she realized I was, she had pulled a lever. But how? How could she trigger an HR investigation at my company in less than an hour? Then I remembered the LinkedIn notification. Brianna viewing my profile, looking for names, looking for connections. She hadn't called HR herself. That would be too obvious. She had done something else, something smarter, something crueler. I stepped out of the security line, clutching my phone. My hands were shaking. I was not going to make the flight. I dialed Karen Miller's direct line. Even though it was early, it went to voicemail. I dialed my boss, Dave. He answered on the second ring. He sounded groggy. Haley? It's early. Aren't you on vacation? Dave, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. I just got a weird email from Karen in HR. About a complaint? Do you know anything about this? There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable pause. Dave? Yeah, I know about it, he said. His voice was different, guarded. Look, Haley, I can't really talk about it until the meeting, but it's serious. HR has to follow process. Dave, what is it? What am I accused of? He sighed. Someone contacted the firm. Haley, they said you... Look, they said you were in a crisis, that you were erratic. The phrase, danger to self or others, was used. They claimed you abandoned a dependent. I felt the blood drain from my face. Abandoned a dependent. She had spun the hallway confrontation. She had called my employer and told them I had abandoned children. Dave, that is a lie. I said, that is a complete lie. I believe you. Haley, Dave said. But he didn't sound like he believed me. He sounded like a man trying to avoid a lawsuit. But the call came from a credible source, a family member. They sounded very concerned. HR has to investigate. It's liability. Just take the call at 9. Clear it up. I hung up. I looked at the departure board. Flight 402 to Portland. On time. I looked at my suitcase. If I stayed for the call, Brianna won. If I stayed, I was admitting that her chaos could reach into my paycheck, my career, my reputation. But if I got on the plane, I would be the erratic employee who skipped a mandatory HR meeting about a mental health crisis. I stood in the middle of the terminal, people rushing past me. I realized then that this was not a tantrum. This was a hit. She was not just trying to ruin my trip. She was trying to destroy my credibility so that if I ever tried to tell the truth about her, I would look like the crazy one. I took a deep breath. I opened my email. I hit reply to Karen Miller. Karen, I am currently at the airport departing for my approved PTO. I effectively deny any allegations regarding my professionalism or personal conduct. I am happy to speak with you upon my return on Wednesday, October 19th. I will not be available before then as I will be out of the office. Regards, Haley. I hit send. I turned off my phone. I walked back into the security line. I was going to Oregon. I was going to Sea Cliff Harbor. And when I came back, I was not going to be the sister who apologized. I was going to be the sister who sued. I handed my ID to the TSA agent. My hand was steady. I was terrified. But I was free. For 5 days, at least, I was free. I boarded the plane, found my seat by the window, and stared out at the tarmac. As the plane taxied, I imagined Brianna checking her watch, waiting for me to call her in a panic, waiting for me to come crawling back to beg her to fix it. She would be waiting a long time. The engines roared. The plane lifted off. I was in the air, and down below, in the city I was leaving behind, I knew the war had just begun. The cabin pressure of the Boeing 737 hummed against my eardrums, a constant, white noise reminder that I was 30,000 feet above the chaos I had left on the ground. I stared out the oval window at the blanket of clouds, holding a plastic cup of ginger ale with a hand that was still trembling. I had made the flight. I was physically moving toward Oregon at 500 miles an hour, but my mind was still stuck in the hallway of my apartment building, replaying the loop of Brianna's voice. You are making me do something I do not want to do. It was a sentence that tasted like metal. It was a threat disguised as a confession. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I had turned it off the moment I sat down in seat 14A, terrified that a ringtone would somehow summon a federal marshal to escort me off the plane for being a bad sister. Now, we were at cruising altitude. I had paid for the in-flight Wi-Fi, telling myself I needed to check my work email. But I knew the truth. I was picking at a scab. The screen flickered to life. The notifications did not trickle in. They detonated. 17 text messages, 5 missed calls, 9 notifications from Instagram, 3 from Facebook. My thumb hovered over the icons. I felt a wave of nausea, the kind that had nothing to do with turbulence and everything to do with shame. I opened the text thread with my mother first, bracing myself for the impact. Mom, call me immediately. Mom, Brianna is at my house. She is hysterical. Mom, how could you leave them there? Mom, Haley, answer me. People are talking. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the seat. Leave them there. The narrative had already been poured into the mold. Brianna had not told our mother that she had dragged the children out of bed at 6 a.m. to ambush me. She had not told her that I had offered to pay for a sitter. She had told her that I had abandoned them. I bypassed my mother's messages. I could not handle her voice in my head right now. I opened Instagram. Brianna had been busy. Her profile was public, a carefully curated gallery of filtered resilience. The most recent post had gone up 2 hours ago. Right around the time I was standing in the security line debating whether to forfeit my job or my sanity. It was a black and white photo of her holding Sophie's hand. The angle was artistic, focusing on their intertwined fingers, capturing a mood of fragile solidarity. The caption was a masterpiece of passive aggression. They say it takes a village, but sometimes you look around and realize the village has burned down. Holding my babies close today as we navigate a world that tells single moms they are on their own. It is a hard lesson to learn that the people you would bleed for will not even inconveniences themselves for you. But we are strong. We will figure it out. We always do. Single mom family, betrayal truth comes out on my own. I felt my face heat up. It was vague enough to be deniable. She had not named me, but specific enough to be a beacon for anyone who knew our family. I scrolled to the comments. Aunt Linda. Oh, honey, my heart breaks for you. Some people are just too selfish to understand true love. A user named Sarah _ from _church. Praying for you. Brianna. The Lord sees who shows up and who walks away. A neighbor from my childhood street. Unbelievable. Stay strong. Mama. I felt like I was reading my own obituary. Written by people who had never met the real me, they were mourning the Haley they thought existed, the dutiful, silent prop, and condemning the Haley who had dared to book a flight. Then, a direct message popped up from an acquaintance, a woman I had gone to high school with, who was now in Brianna's Mommy and Me yoga circle. Hey Haley, just saw Bree's post. I hope you are okay. But I have to say, I was really surprised to hear you left her high and dry like that. Those kids adore you. Hope it was worth it. I dropped the phone into my lap as if it were burning. Hope it was worth it. I looked around the plane. The man next to me was asleep, his mouth slightly open. A flight attendant was walking down the aisle collecting trash. Normal life was happening all around me. But I felt like I was in a glass box, screaming where no one could hear. I needed an anchor. I picked the phone up again and dialed Mara. She answered on the first ring, her voice clear and sharp. Tell me you are on the plane, she said. I whispered, keeping my voice low so the sleeping man would not wake. I am in the air. But Mara, it is a disaster. She brought the kids to my apartment. She showed up at 6 a.m. I heard Mara inhale sharply. She did what? She tried to force me to take them, and when I refused, I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it difficult to speak. When I refused, she looked at me and said I was making her do something she did not want to do. And then, 20 minutes later, HR emailed me. HR? Mara asked, her voice rising. Your job? Yes, someone filed a complaint. They said I was unstable. They said I abandoned a dependent. There was a silence on the line, the kind of silence that happens when a friend realizes the situation is worse than they thought. Haley, Mara said, her tone dropping into a serious, clinical register. Listen to me very carefully. This is not a tantrum. This is a strategy. I know, I said, wiping a tear from my cheek before it could fall. I know, but I feel like a monster. Everyone is commenting on her posts. They all think I left those kids on the street. Let them think it, Mara said fiercely. They are the audience for her play. You are not in the play anymore. You walked off the stage. That is why she is panicking. She cannot control the narrative if you are not there to play the villain, but she called my job. Mara. She tried to get me fired, and that proves exactly who she is, Mara countered. A sister does not try to get you fired because you went on vacation. An abuser does that. A person who views you as property does that. The word property stung, but it rang with a sickening truth. I replayed the hallway scene, the look in Leo's eyes when he asked if I was mad at him. I feel like I hurt the kids. I whispered, You did not hurt them, Mara said firmly. You protected them from seeing their aunt get bullied into submission. You offered to pay for a sitter. You offered alternatives. She refused them because she did not want childcare. She wanted you. She wanted your submission. I looked out the window again. The clouds were breaking, revealing patches of brown and green earth far below. What do? I asked. You turn off your phone, Mara said. You land in Oregon. You get your rental car. You drive to the ocean. And you do not respond to a single person except me. Do not defend yourself in the comments. Do not text your mom back. Give them silence. Silence is the only thing that scares a narcissist. I took a deep breath. Okay. I am serious. Haley, do not engage. If you engage, you give her fuel. Starve the fire. I will. I said, Thank you. Mara, call me when you get to the cottage. And Haley? Yeah? You are not crazy. Remember that. I hung up. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then powered it down completely. I shoved it deep into the bottom of my carry-on bag, underneath my socks and the mystery novel. For the rest of the flight, I sat in silence. I did not read. I did not sleep. I just watched the world pass by underneath me, trying to convince myself that I had the right to occupy a seat on this plane. We landed in Portland just after noon. The sky was a heavy, slate gray, leaking a fine mist of rain that felt familiar and cleansing. I moved through the airport like a ghost. I retrieved my bag from the carousel, watching it circle 3 times before I had the energy to grab the handle. I walked to the rental car center, my footsteps echoing on the linoleum. The woman at the counter was cheerful. She upgraded me to a small SUV because they were out of economy sedans. "You are heading to the coast?" she asked. Handing me the keys. "Yes," I said. "Seacliff Harbor. Beautiful spot," she said. "Stormy this time of year. Though, watch the curves on Highway 6. I nodded. Stormy felt appropriate. The drive was 2 hours of winding roads through dense, moss-draped forests. I did not turn on the radio. I needed the quiet. I needed to hear the sound of the tires on the wet pavement, the rhythmic thwack hiss of the windshield wipers. As I drove, my mind kept drifting back to the HR email. I had refused to open it again, but the words were burned into my retinas. Serious concerns regarding your stability. It was a brilliant word choice. Stability. It suggested I was cracking. It suggested that any defense I mounted would be the ravings of a hysterical woman. If I got angry, I was unstable. If I cried, I was unstable. The only way to prove I was stable was to accept the accusation with a smile, which was exactly what Brianna counted on. She knew where to hit. She knew my job was my sanctuary, the one place where I was judged solely on my output, not my emotional utility, by poisoning that well. She was trying to force me back into the family ecosystem, the only place that would accept me, provided I played by her rules. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I would not let her take Northline. I had the documentation. I had the dates. I would meet with Karen Miller on Wednesday, and I would lay it all out. Calm and cold. The forest eventually gave way to the coast. The trees thinned, and suddenly, the horizon opened up, the Pacific Ocean. It was vast, angry, and beautiful. White-capped waves hammered against black basalt cliffs. The air that rushed into the car when I cracked the window smelled of salt and pine and decay. I breathed it in, deep. I found the cottage easily. It was perched on a bluff overlooking the water, a small, cedar-shingled structure with a wraparound porch. It looked exactly like the pictures, which felt like a small miracle in a week of deceptions. I parked the car and killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy. But it was not hostile. It was just the world, existing without me. I unpacked slowly. I hung my clothes in the small closet. I put my toiletries in the bathroom. I put the bottle of Pinot Noir I had bought at a grocery store in Portland on the counter. I was here. I had done it. I walked out onto the deck. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around myself and watched the waves crash. For an hour, I felt something approaching peace. Then, the sun began to set, turning the sky a bruised purple. The temperature dropped. I went inside and turned on the gas fireplace. I knew I had to do it. I had to turn the phone back on. I needed to check in with Mara, and I needed to ensure the building manager hadn't emailed about an actual emergency. I sat on the couch, poured a glass of wine, and retrieved the phone from my bag. I held the power button. The Apple logo appeared. The vibration started immediately. It buzzed against my palm like an angry insect. More texts, more notifications. I ignored the social media apps. I went straight to my messages. There was one from my mother, sent 20 minutes ago. Mom, Haley, please, I do not want to argue, but I'm sitting here with Brianna and she is showing me the texts. I frowned. What texts? Mom. She showed me the conversation from August where you said you would take the kids this weekend. She says you are confused, that maybe you are under too much stress at work. Is that true? Did you forget? I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice water. The conversation from August. I had not spoken to Brianna in August about October. In August, we had discussed Mom's birthday and Leo's soccer schedule. She was forging texts, or she was taking a vague, maybe sometime in the fall, and framing it as a contract for this specific weekend. My mother's tone, "She says you are confused," was the terrifying part. It was the seed of the narrative Brianna had planted with HR. Haley is losing it. Haley is stressed. Haley forgets things. It was gaslighting on an industrial scale. If I did not respond, my silence would be taken as an admission of guilt. My mother was wavering. She wanted to believe Brianna because believing Brianna was easier than facing the reality that her eldest daughter was a liar. But she had asked, "Is that true?" There was a crack in the door. I had to shove my foot in it. I did not call. I could not trust myself not to scream. And screaming would only prove I was unstable. I opened my laptop. I went to my cloud backup of my phone data, a habit I had formed years ago after losing a phone in a cab. I pulled up the text logs from August. I searched for the keywords October. Weekend. Kids. Trip. Nothing. The only conversation in August was Brianna asking if I could lend her $200 for a vet bill. I did. And me asking if she was coming to Mom's Labor Day barbecue. She didn't. I took a screenshot of the entire month of August text history. Then I went to the conversation from 4 days ago, the one where I told her I booked the trip. Me. "Hey, yes, I just booked a few days in Oregon. Really need to unplug." Brianna. "Must be nice to just up and leave." There was no, "Wait, you promised to watch the kids." There was no, "What about the retreat?" There was just envy. I took a screenshot of that too. I went back to the message thread with my mother. I typed carefully, "Mom, Brianna is lying. I did not speak to her about this weekend in August. Here is the entire transcript of our texts from August. Here is the transcript from Tuesday when I told her I booked the trip. Notice she did not mention a retreat or childcare then. She only brought it up yesterday. I attached the images. I am not confused. I am not under stress. I am being manipulated. And so are you." I hit send. I watched the status change to delivered, then read. I waited. I expected 3 dots. I expected a call. I expected a flood of apologies, or at least a, "Let me ask her about this." The phone sat on the coffee table. The fireplace hissed. Outside, the ocean roared. 1 minute passed, 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes. My mother was looking at proof. She was holding the black and white evidence that one daughter was lying to destroy the other, but the phone remained silent, and in that silence, I felt a heartbreak deeper than the anger. She wasn't replying because she didn't believe me. She was replying because she did believe me. She saw the truth, and she was terrified of it. Because if I was telling the truth, then Brianna was dangerous. And if Brianna was dangerous, then my mother's entire strategy of appeasement was not keeping the peace. It was feeding a monster. My mother was sitting in a room with Brianna right now. She was likely looking at her phone, then looking up at Brianna's tear-stained, perfectly made-up face. She was doing the calculus. If she sided with me, Brianna would explode. She would withhold the grandchildren. She would scream. She would make my mother's life a living hell. If she stayed silent, I would be hurt. But I was Haley. I was the strong one. I was the one who could take it. I was the one who would eventually forgive her because I always did. She was sacrificing me to save herself. I poured the rest of the wine into my glass. My hand was steady now. The silence from my mother was the final severance. The cord was cut. Not by me, but by her cowardice. I picked up the phone one last time. I did not text my mother again. I did not text Brianna. I opened the folder I had named Documentation. I added the screenshots I had just sent my mother. I added a screenshot of my mother's text asking if I was confused. Then I opened a new note. Incident log. October 14th. Event. Brianna creates false narrative of prior agreement. Action. Mother attempts to validate false narrative based on hearsay. Evidence. Text logs prove no such agreement existed. Outcome. Mother presented with proof. No response. I typed it out like a police report. It was cold. It was detached. It was the only way I was going to survive this. I closed the laptop. I turned off the lights in the living room and watched the firelight dance on the wooden walls. I was alone in a cottage on the edge of the continent. My family was 3,000 miles away, rewriting my life into a tragedy of selfishness. But they had made a mistake. They thought they were isolating me. They thought that by stripping away my support system, my reputation, and my mother's approval, they would break me. They didn't realize that they were just removing the distractions. I wasn't broken. I was focused. I took a sip of wine. "Okay," I said aloud to the empty room. "Let's play." I returned to the city on a Wednesday morning that felt less like a homecoming and more like an infiltration behind enemy lines. The flight back had been uneventful, but the silence from my family was deafening. My phone, which I had turned back on at the baggage claim, was a graveyard of unreturned calls from before the trip, followed by a stark, deliberate void. No, "Did you get home safe?" texts. No, "How is the coast?" Just nothing. I took an Uber to my apartment. The lobby smelled of rain and old floor wax. The doorman, a normally chatty guy named Hector, gave me a tight nod and looked away, suddenly fascinated by a stack of mail. I felt a prickle of paranoia. Had Brianna spoken to him too? Had she spun some story about her unstable sister to the building staff? I pushed the thought away. Paranoia was what she wanted. It made me look guilty. I dropped my bags, showered off the travel grime, and put on my armor, a charcoal blazer, a white silk blouse, and the heels that made me feel 3 inches taller and 10 degrees colder. I had a meeting with HR at 2 o'clock. I arrived at Northline Creative at 1:45. The office was buzzing with the usual midweek energy, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the hum of the espresso machine, but as I walked to my desk, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations seemed to pause for a microsecond. Eyes flicked toward me and then darted away. I sat down, my heart hammering against my ribs, and opened my email. There was a calendar invite. Meeting regarding professional conduct inquiry, conference room B. I took a deep breath, grabbed my folder, the one containing the printed screenshots, the flight itinerary, and the email log, and walked to conference room B. Karen Miller, the HR manager, was already there. She was a woman who smiled with her mouth but never her eyes. Sitting next to her was the director of HR, a man named Tom, who always looked like he was regretting his career choices. "Haley, thanks for coming in," Karen said. Her tone was professionally neutral. The kind of voice you use when you are about to euthanize a pet. "Please, sit down." I sat. I placed my folder on the table. "We wanted to follow up on the concern we received last week," Karen began. "As we mentioned, we take allegations of personal instability and erratic behavior very seriously, especially when they impact an employee's availability. I would like to know the specific nature of the allegation." I said. My voice was steady. I had rehearsed this in the shower. Tom cleared his throat. "The caller, a family member who wished to remain anonymous for their safety, stated that you were in the midst of a mental health crisis. They claimed you had abandoned 2 minor children on a doorstep without supervision and fled the state. A doorstep. The image was so specific, so cinematic. It was designed to evoke maximum horror. That is a lie," I said. I did not raise my voice. I did not sound defensive. I sounded bored. Karen blinked. "Okay, can you walk us through your version of events?" I opened my folder. I booked my PTO on September 22nd. It was approved by Dave on September 23rd. Here's the approval email. I pushed the paper across the table. I booked my flight on October 4th. Here's the receipt. I pushed that across, too. On the morning of my departure, my sister arrived at my apartment unannounced with her children. Demanding I cancel my trip to Babysit, I refused. I offered to pay for a sitter. She refused. She left with her children. At no point were the children abandoned. At no point was I in a crisis. I then proceeded to the airport and took my scheduled flight. I looked directly at Tom. The caller was my sister, Brianna Hale. She was angry that I would not provide free childcare. She used this hotline to punish me. That is not a mental health crisis. Tom, that is a domestic dispute that she dragged into this office. Tom looked at the papers. He looked at Karen. The allegation mentioned you were incoherent, Karen said. But she sounded less sure now. That you were a danger to yourself. I leaned forward. Do I seem incoherent? Karen? I have worked here for 5 years. I have never missed a deadline. I have never had a complaint. I am sitting here, 3 days after the alleged incident, perfectly calm. Karen shifted in her seat. Well, obviously, we have to investigate any claim of this magnitude. It is a liability issue. Of course, I said. And now that you have investigated and seen that I was on approved leave and that the timeline proves this was a retaliatory call, I trust this will be closed? Tom nodded slowly. If what you are saying is true, and the documentation supports it, then yes, we can close the file. But Haley, he paused, we would suggest you keep your family matters contained. It is disruptive to the firm to have people calling the ethics hotline with personal grievances. I felt a flash of white-hot anger, contained, as if I had invited her to call. I understand. I said, I will make sure she understands that contacting my employer again will be considered harassment. I stood up. Is there anything else? No, Karen said. You can go back to work. I walked out of the conference room. My legs felt like jelly. But I kept my chin up. I had won the battle, but the war was just starting. They hadn't fired me, but they had looked at me differently. I was now the employee with the drama. I was the one whose sister called the ethics hotline. The stain was there. I went back to my desk and worked for 3 hours, staring at spreadsheets until the numbers blurred. At 5:30, I packed up and left. I decided to stop at my mother's house on the way home. It was a mistake, but I needed to see her face. I needed to know if she was really part of this. Her car was in the driveway. The lights were on. I unlocked the front door with my key. Mom? She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. She jumped when she saw me. Haley, she gasped. You scared me. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask how the trip was. She just looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. I heard you went to HR today, she said. My stomach dropped. How did she know? Brianna told me. She said, answering my unspoken question, she said she was worried you were going to lose your job. Worried? I laughed. A harsh, dry sound. Mom, she is the one who called them. She told them I abandoned Leo and Sophie on a doorstep. Mom put down the knife. Haley, please, lower your voice. Did she tell you that? I demanded. Did she tell you she tried to get me fired? She didn't try to get you fired, Mom said, her voice trembling. She was just concerned. She said you were acting so strange that morning, so cold. She thought maybe you were having a breakdown. She called them to get you help. Help? I stared at my mother. Do you actually believe that? Do you believe that calling my HR department 5 minutes before my flight was an act of love? Mom wiped her hands on a dish towel. I don't know what to believe. Haley, everyone is so upset. Brianna has been crying for days. She says you won't answer her texts. She says you are icing her out. I am icing her out because she is dangerous. Mom, she is your sister, Mom shouted, slamming the towel onto the counter. She is family. You can't just declare war on her because of one bad weekend. One bad weekend? I stepped closer. She lied to you about the texts. I sent you the proof. Did you even look at it? Mom looked away. I didn't want to get in the middle of it. You are in the middle of it. You are the referee, Mom, and you are letting her cheat. Mom started to cry. Great, she sobbed. Now you are yelling at me. I just want everyone to get along. Can't you just smooth it over? Just apologize for the miscommunication and let's move on. Apologize? For the miscommunication, she repeated. Just say you are sorry things got out of hand. That is all she wants. She just wants to feel respected. I looked at my mother. a woman I had spent my entire life trying to please, trying to protect, and I realized she was gone. She wasn't my mother anymore. She was Brianna's hostage. "I am not apologizing," I said quietly, "and if you continue to defend her, I can't be around you either." I turned and walked out. "Haley, wait." I didn't wait. I got in my car and drove. I felt hollowed out. I had expected anger, but I hadn't expected this level of delusion. Brianna had rewritten reality so effectively that even the victim was being asked to apologize to the arsonist. I got home at 7. I was exhausted. I just wanted to order takeout and sleep for 12 hours. I checked my mailbox in the lobby on my way in. It was mostly junk. Coupons, a catalog, but there was one envelope that stood out. It was thick. It was certified mail. It had been signed for by the doorman earlier that day. The return address was Crestwood Pine Legal Services. I frowned. I didn't know anyone named Crestwood or Pine. I took it upstairs and opened it at my kitchen island. "Dear Ms. Watson, Outstanding debt repayment. Promissory note. Dated February 14th, 2018. We represent the interests of First Horizon Holdings regarding an outstanding debt obligation in the amount of $12,450. Our records indicate that you are the co-signatory on a personal loan agreement executed on the above date. The primary borrower, Brianna Hale, has defaulted on the repayment schedule. As co-signer, you are fully liable for the remaining balance. We demand immediate payment of the full amount within 30 days. Failure to respond may result in wage garnishment, asset seizure, and legal action. Please find the attached copy of the promissory note." I stared at the letter. The numbers swam before my eyes. $12,000? I turned to the attached document. It was a grainy photocopy of a loan agreement. I scanned the page. February 2018. That was 8 years ago. I was 25. I remembered that year. Brianna was trying to buy a condo. She had bad credit because of her divorce. She had asked me to help. It's just a formality. "Haley, I just need a co-signer to get the approval. I'll refinance in 6 months and take your name off. You won't even know it happened." I remembered signing something. I remembered sitting at her kitchen table, eating pizza, while she pushed a stack of papers toward me. "Sign here, and here. Thanks, you're a lifesaver." The condo deal had fallen through. She never moved. I assumed the loan had been canceled or paid back. I looked at the signature on the bottom of the page. Haley Watson. It looked like my signature. A little loopier than I wrote now. But it was mine. But the date? February 14th? I was in Mexico on February 14th, 2018. I was at my best friend Mara's bachelorette party. I remembered it vividly because I had gotten terrible sunburn. I couldn't have signed this in person on that date. My heart started to race. Wage garnishment, asset seizure. This wasn't just a threat. This was a nuclear bomb. She had defaulted? Now? The timing was impossible. You don't just default and get a legal letter the same week your sister refuses to babysit. This had been held in reserve. I grabbed my phone and called Mara. She answered immediately. "You are back?" "I am back," I said, "and I think I am being sued." "What?" I read her the letter. $12,000. Mara said, "Jesus. Haley, I didn't sign this on that date. Mara, I was with you in Cabo. Remember? I remember you peeling skin off your nose for 3 days." Mara said, "You were definitely in Cabo. So the document is fake? Or the date is wrong?" Mara said, "Or she forged it. Or she backdated it." "Haley, you need a lawyer, not a family lawyer, a consumer protection lawyer, someone who deals with debt and fraud. I don't have money for a lawyer." I said, panic rising in my throat. "You have savings," Mara said, "and this is what savings are for. To keep your sister from garnishing your wages. I know a guy, Dylan Kessler. He helped my cousin with a predatory lending thing. He is a shark. I am texting you his number right now. Call him." I hung up and stared at the letter. Wage garnishment. She was going after my livelihood. First HR, now this. She knew I prided myself on my financial independence. She knew I was saving for a house. She was attacking the very foundations of my safety. I called the number Mara sent. It went to voicemail. You have reached the office of Dylan Kessler. Please leave a message. Hi, Mr. Kessler. My name is Haley Watson. I believe I'm being targeted by a fraudulent debt claim involving a family member. It involves a significant amount of money and potential forgery. Please call me back. It is urgent. I hung up and sat on the floor of my kitchen. I felt like I was drowning. The walls were closing in. Then, my phone buzzed. A text from Brianna. It was the first time she had texted me directly since the hallway. We can stop all this if you just help when I ask. It doesn't have to be this hard. I stared at the screen. There it was. The confession. We can stop all this. She wasn't even pretending anymore. The HR call, the social media campaign, the legal letter. It was all a dial she could turn up or down. She was telling me that she had the power to destroy me. And the price of safety was submission. If I replied, I was playing her game. If I screamed, I was unstable. If I paid the money, I was admitting the debt. I took a screenshot of the text. I added it to the documentation folder. I did not reply. Instead, I stood up. I went to my filing cabinet, a small metal box I kept in my closet. I started digging. I needed to find my tax returns from 2018. I needed to find my bank statements. I needed to find my passport to prove I was in Mexico. I found my passport. I flipped to the pages. There was the stamp. Entry, Mexico. February 12th, 2018. Exit, Mexico. February 16th, 2018. I held the passport in my hand like a weapon. I was not in the country when that document was signed. I felt a cold, hard clarity settle over me. This wasn't just bullying. This was fraud. This was a crime. She had forged my signature, or she had altered the dates, and she had done it years ago, keeping it in her back pocket like a loaded gun, waiting for the day I stopped being useful. I looked at the stack of papers on my floor, the passport, the legal letter, the screenshots. I wasn't just a sister anymore. I was a witness. I sat there for hours, organizing the files. I created a timeline on a notepad. 2018. Alleged loan signed. Proven false via passport. 2020. Emergency babysitting weekend. Review texts. Coincided with her divorce filing. 2022. Loaned $2,000 for car repair. Need to find bank transfer. I started to see the pattern. Every crisis she had was financial, and every solution involved me signing something, paying something, or covering for something. She wasn't just messy, she was a systemic user. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Dylan Kessler. Ms. Watson? This is Dylan. I got your message. Mr. Kessler, thank you for calling back. Tell me about the letter, he said. His voice was raspy, tired, but sharp. I explained it. The date, the Mexico trip, the text message she just sent. He listened without interrupting for 5 minutes. Okay, he said finally. Here is what we are going to do. Do not contact the collection agency. Do not contact your sister. Bring that letter and your passport to my office tomorrow morning at 9. Can you stop it? I asked. If she forged a signature on a promissory note and tried to enforce it to extort you? He asked. Ms. Watson, we can do a lot more than stop it. This is abuse of process. This is fraud. And if that agency is real, they are going to want to know they are holding a radioactive document. I will be there. I said. I hung up. I looked around my apartment. It felt different now. It wasn't just my home. It was my command center. Brianna had sent that text thinking it would break me. We can stop all this. She thought I would read it and beg for mercy. She thought I would drive to her house, apologize to Mom, write a check for the debt, and resume my post as the reliable doormat. She didn't know I had a passport stamp. She didn't know I had Mara. She didn't know I had Dylan Kessler. She had started a fire, thinking she could control the burn. She didn't realize the wind had changed. I went to the bathroom and washed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked older than 33, but my eyes were clear. I walked back to the kitchen, picked up my phone, and looked at Brianna's text one last time. "We can stop all this." "No," I whispered to the empty room. "We can't." I turned off the lights and went to bed. I didn't sleep well, but I didn't cry. I lay in the dark, mentally drafting the affidavit I would write in the morning. The sister who protected her was dead. The sister who prosecuted her was just waking up. The next morning, Dylan Kessler's office turned out to be a small, cluttered suite in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner. He was a man in his 50s with messy gray hair and a coffee stain on his tie. He looked at my passport. He looked at the letter. He looked at the text message. He let out a low whistle. "This is textbooks," he said. "Textbook what?" I asked. "Coercive control," he said. "But legally, it is attempted extortion. Look at the letterhead. Crestwood Pine." I looked them up. They are a bottom feeder collection agency. They buy bad debt for pennies on the dollar. But here's the thing. If the original debt was from 2018 and there has been no activity, the statute of limitations on collecting might have already expired depending on the contract terms. So why send it now? Because she triggered it. He said, "She likely called them or the original creditor and admitted to the debt recently to restart the clock, then pointed them at you as the solvent party. She woke the zombie up. Can she do that? She can try. But this date?" He tapped the passport. "This kills it. You were out of the country. A notary would have had to witness you signing this. If there is a notary stamp on the original, that notary committed a felony. What do? We send a debt validation letter." He said, "We demand the original wet ink document, we demand the notary's logbook, and we inform them that the alleged signatory was in Mexico on the date of execution." "And the text message?" I asked. "The one where she says she can stop it?" He smiled. A sharp, shark-like smile. "We save that. That is for later. That is the leverage. If this goes to court, that text proves she is using the legal system as a weapon. Judges hate that." He drafted the letter while I sat there. It was aggressive. It used words like fraudulent conveyance and perjury. He printed it out. "Sign here." I signed. "This goes out today. Certified mail," he said. "They will get it by Monday." "What happens then?" "Then they panic," he said. "Or they drop it. Or your sister doubles down. She will double down." I said, "She never folds." "Good," Dylan said. "Let her. When people double down on a lie, they usually make mistakes. We just have to be ready to catch them." I left his office feeling lighter. I had a champion. I went to work. I kept my head down. Around noon, I got a text from Gavin, Brianna's ex-husband. "Hey, Haley. Sorry to bother you. Is everything okay? Bree is telling everyone you are having some kind of legal trouble and asked if I could loan you money. I told her I would call you first." I stared at the phone. She was telling people I was in legal trouble. She was framing the debt, her debt, as my problem. She was trying to fundraise off my crisis. I typed back, "Gavin, do not give her money. I am not in legal trouble. Brianna is trying to stick me with a debt she defaulted on. It is being handled by my lawyer. Please do not get involved." He replied instantly. "Whoa, okay. Thanks for the heads up. She made it sound like you were about to be arrested. I am fine." I wrote, "But Gavin, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "The weekend I was supposed to babysit, did she tell you she had a work retreat?" "Retreat?" He wrote, "No. She told me she had a house inspection for that new townhouse complex she's trying to get into, Redwood Ridge. She said she needed the kids out of the house so it looked like she lived alone." I froze. A house inspection. Not a work retreat. Not a crisis. She was lying to get into low-income housing or a specific development that had strict occupancy rules. She needed to hide the kids. Or maybe she needed to look like a single occupant to qualify for a loan. She wanted me to take the kids so she could erase them for 48 hours. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yeah." He wrote, "She asked me to write a letter saying the kids stay with me 50% of the time, which isn't true, but she said it was for the application." I took a screenshot. Another lie. Another piece of the puzzle. She hadn't needed childcare. She had needed an accomplice in a fraud. And when I refused, I didn't just ruin her weekend, I ruined her scam. That was why she was so angry. That was why she was punishing me. I had cost her the townhouse. I sat back in my chair. I wasn't just dealing with a mean sister. I was dealing with a person who treated reality as a suggestion. I forwarded the screenshot to Dylan. New info. I typed, "The emergency was a cover for housing application fraud." He replied a minute later, "Keep digging. We are going to need a bigger shovel." I went back to work, but my mind was racing. If she lied about the retreat, and she lied about the debt, what else was she lying about? I thought about the family loan again. The one she said fell through. I logged into the county property records website. It was a long shot, but public records were public for a reason. I searched Brianna Hale. Nothing. I searched Brianna Watson, her maiden name. Nothing. I searched the address of the condo she tried to buy in 2018. Sold to Brianna Hale and Thomas Hale. February 28, 2018. She had bought it. She had bought the condo. She hadn't told me. She had used the loan I co-signed to close the deal, then sold it 2 years later. Sold. August 2020. She sold it for a profit. So where was the money? Why was the debt still outstanding? She had pocketed the sale proceeds and stiffed the lender. And because my name was on the note, the lender was coming for me. She had stolen $12,000 from the bank, and now she was trying to make me pay it back. I felt sick, physically sick. This wasn't family drama. This was embezzlement. I printed the property records. I put them in the folder. I had her. I had the proof. But I wasn't going to reveal it yet. I was going to wait. I was going to let her think she was winning. I was going to let her send more texts, make more threats, dig the hole deeper, and then, when she was standing at the bottom of it, holding the shovel, I was going to turn on the lights. I closed my laptop. I drove home. The city looked different tonight. The shadows seemed sharper. The lights seemed brighter. I wasn't Haley the doormat anymore. I was Haley the investigator. And I was just getting started. The waiting game was the hardest part of the legal process. Television dramas make lawsuits look like fast-paced tennis matches of objection and overruled, but in reality, the legal system is a slow, grinding machine fueled by paper and silence. For 4 days after my meeting with Dylan Kessler, we heard nothing from Crestwood Pine. I went to work every day, sat at my desk, and performed the role of the diligent employee, all while feeling the phantom weight of a garnishment order hanging over my paycheck. I checked my bank account 3 times a day, terrified I would see a zero balance or a freeze. My mother had stopped texting me. The family group chat had gone dormant, which was more ominous than the insults. It was the silence of a trench before the whistle blows. On Tuesday afternoon, Dylan called me. "It is here," he said. His voice was grim. "Come by the office on your way home." I arrived at 5:30. The strip mall was busy. The dry cleaner next door venting steam into the cool autumn air. I walked into Dylan's office, and he was already waiting for me. A stack of papers spread out on his cheap laminate desk. "They stalled," he said, gesturing to the pile. "They claimed they needed to retrieve the file from deep storage. Then they claimed the original creditor had the physical copy. But we pushed, and they finally sent the verification packet." He picked up a document and handed it to me. "Take a look at the promissory note," he said. "Look closely." I took the paper. It was a photocopy of a photocopy, grainy and speckled with artifacts. It was titled Personal Loan Agreement, dated February 14th, 2018. My eyes went to the signature line. Haley Watson. It was my name. It looked like my handwriting. But as I stared at it, something felt wrong. The slant was too vertical. The loop on the Y was too tight. "Now look at the borrower's address," Dylan said. I scanned up to the top of the page. Borrower, Brianna Hale. Address, 420 Cedar Lane, Apartment 4B. Cosigner, Haley Watson. Address, 420 Cedar Lane, Apartment 4B. I frowned. "I never lived at Cedar Lane," I said. That was Brianna's apartment. "I lived on 4th Street in 2018. I have never lived with Brianna as an adult." Dylan nodded. "Exactly. And look at the date of birth listed for you." I looked. DOB. June 12, 1990. My birthday is June 21st. I said. They got the day backwards. He leaned back in his creaking chair. This isn't a loan document you signed. Haley, this is a cut-and-paste job. Or more likely, she filled it out herself, forged your signature, and used her own address for you so that any mail or delinquency notices would go to her. Not you. That is why you never heard about this debt until she decided to weaponize it. She has been hiding the notices for 8 years. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. So it is fraud, I whispered. It is definitely fraud. Dylan said, but here is the kicker. This debt? It was bundled. Look at the itemized breakdown. He pointed to a second page. Consolidation of existing liabilities. Credit 1 Visa. Rooms to go financing. Speedy cash advance. She didn't use this loan to buy a condo, Dylan said. Or at least, not just a condo. She used your name to consolidate her credit card debt and a furniture loan into one lower interest package. She refinanced her bad decisions onto your credit score. I stared at the paper. Rooms to go. Speedy cash. She had bought a leather sectional and paid off a payday loan, and she had anchored me to it without my knowledge. This was why she needed me to be unstable, if I was unstable. I couldn't be a credible witness against her. If I was the crazy sister, then my claims of fraud would look like paranoid delusions. We have them. Dylan, I said, this proves it. The address, the birthday, the passport. We have a strong defense, Dylan corrected. But to make this go away, we need to strike the root. We need to know why she is doing this now. Why trigger the nuclear option over a babysitting weekend? It doesn't track. People don't commit felonies just because they are mad about childcare. He looked at me over his glasses. There is something else. Haley. Something we are missing. She is desperate. This smells like desperation. Not just vengeance. I thought about the text from Gavin. House inspection? Redwood Ridge? I think I might know. I said, but I need to talk to my mother first. Dylan frowned. Is that safe? Probably not, I said, but she is the only one who knows where the bodies are buried, and I think she is tired of digging. I texted my mother from the parking lot. Meet me at Pinecrest Diner, 7 o'clock, alone. If you don't come, I am filing a police report for identity theft against Brianna tomorrow morning. It was a bluff. I wasn't ready to go to the police yet, but I knew it would work. My mother's greatest fear wasn't crime. It was scandal. I arrived at the diner at 6:45. It was a relic of the 90s, smelling of burnt coffee and maple syrup. I chose a booth in the back, facing the door. My mother walked in at 7 sharp. She looked 10 years older than she had a month ago. Her shoulders were slumped, and she was clutching her purse like a shield. She saw me and hesitated, then walked over and slid into the booth opposite me. She didn't say hello. She just looked at the laminate table. You look tired. Mom, I said softly. I am tired, she said. Her voice was brittle. I am tired of my daughters tearing each other apart. We aren't tearing each other apart. I said, one of us is attacking. The other is trying to survive. She looked up. Her eyes rimmed with red. She says you are suing her. She says you are trying to take money from her that she doesn't have. I reached into my bag and pulled out the photocopy of the loan agreement. I slid it across the table. Look at the address. Mom. She squinted at the paper. Cedar Lane? I never lived at Cedar Lane. She paused. Well, maybe she just put it down for convenience. And my birthday? I asked. June 12th? Mom frowned. That is wrong. And the signature? I pointed to the jagged scrawl. Does that look like me? Mom stared at the document. Her hands started to shake. She forged it. Mom, 8 years ago, she took out a loan in my name to pay off her credit cards. And now that she has defaulted, she is trying to make me pay $12,000. Mom closed her eyes. I know, she whispered. The air left the booth. You know? I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. Mom covered her face with her hands. I didn't know she used your name. I swear. Haley. But I knew. I knew she was in trouble back then. She came to me. She was drowning in debt. The divorce lawyers. The apartment. She was desperate. She told me she found a way to fix it. She said she got a loan. I didn't ask how. You didn't ask, I repeated, because you didn't want to know. I wanted her to be okay, Mom hissed, dropping her hands. You don't understand. Haley, you have always been the strong one. You have your career. You have your savings. Brianna struggles. She has always struggled. I just wanted her to catch a break. So you let her steal from me? I didn't know it was you. But when she called me last week, screaming about the legal letter, she told me. She said it was the only way she could get approved. She said you wouldn't mind because you have plenty of money. I felt a crack in my chest, a physical pain that radiated outward. I don't have plenty of money. Mom, I work for my money, and she isn't asking for a loan. She is trying to garnish my wages. She called my HR department. She tried to get me fired. Mom looked down at her coffee cup, which the waitress had just filled. She is scared. Haley, she is really scared this time. Scared of what? I asked. Why is she doing this now? Why the explosion over a weekend trip? Mom bit her lip. She looked around the diner, checking for eavesdroppers. She is trying to get into Redwood Ridge, Mom said quietly. I nodded. Gavin told me that. The townhomes. It is not just townhomes. Haley, it is a subsidized ownership program. It is income restricted, but you have to prove strict financial stability, and she lowered her voice. Moral character. It is run by a church coalition. They interview neighbors. They look at your social media. They do home visits. And she has been lying to them. Mom said, she told them she receives regular child support. She doesn't. She told them she has full-time family childcare support. She doesn't. She built this whole application on a house of cards. I leaned forward. The weekend I went away. Was that the home visit? Mom nodded miserably. The intake coordinator was coming that Saturday morning. Brianna needed the house to look perfect. She needed the kids to be calm and happy, and she needed you there. Why me? Because she told them you were her co-parent. Mom said. The world stopped spinning for a second. Excuse me? She told them that her sister, the successful marketing executive, was her live-in support system. She told them you spent every weekend there, that you helped with the bills, that you were the stability anchor. I sat back, stunned. She wasn't asking me to babysit. She was casting me. She needed me to be there when the coordinator arrived. I realized aloud. She needed me to open the door, smile, pour coffee, and look like the responsible backup parent she had promised them existed. Mom nodded. And when you said no, when you said you were going to Oregon, the house of cards fell down. I finished. She couldn't produce the co-parent. She couldn't explain why her support system was on a vacation she claimed didn't exist. She panicked. Mom said, she called me that night. She said if you didn't come, she would lose the house. She begged me to make you cancel. But you didn't tell me that. Mom, you just told me to be a good sister. Because she made me promise. Mom's eyes filled with tears again. She said if I told you the truth, you would judge her. You would lecture her about lying. And she said what? She said if she lost this house, she was moving to Arizona. Mom whispered. She said she would take Leo and Sophie, and I would never see them again. I stared at my mother. There it was. The leverage. She threatened you with the grandkids. I said, she means it. Haley, she said I had to choose. If I helped you, I lost them. So you chose her. I chose the kids. Mom sobbed quietly. I just want them to be safe. I just want them to have a home. Haley, please, can't you just drop it? Can't you just pay the debt? I will pay you back slowly. I promise. Just make the legal thing go away so she can get the house. I looked at the woman sitting across from me. I loved her. I had spent my life trying to earn her praise. But in that moment, I saw her clearly. She wasn't a victim. She was an enabler. She was financing the hostage taker. If I pay it, Mom, she will do it again. She will forge another signature. She will lie on another application. And next time, it might be $50,000. Or she might hurt those kids with her negligence. And we won't be able to stop it because we spent years covering for her. I am not doing it. I said, Haley, no. I am not paying for her fraud, and I am not playing the co-parent in her fantasy. I stood up. I put a $20 bill on the table for the coffee I hadn't touched. I'm going to fight this, Mom, with a lawyer. And if you want to see your grandchildren, you better hope I win, because if she drags me down, I won't be able to help anyone. I walked out of the diner. The cool air hit my face, drying the sweat on my forehead. I got into my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. It wasn't a mental health crisis. It wasn't a work retreat. It was a performance. She had written a script where I was the supporting character who saved the day. And when I refused to learn my lines, she tried to burn the theater down. I needed to confirm it. I needed the smoking gun that proved she planned to use me as a prop long before I booked my trip. I drove home, my mind racing. Gavin was the weak link. He was tired. He was broke. And he was clearly being manipulated too. I got home at 8. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on my couch and dialed Gavin's number. He answered on the second ring. Haley, is everything okay? Hey, Gavin, I said. My voice was calm. I am okay. I had a long talk with my mom. She told me about Redwood Ridge. There was a long silence on the other end. Oh, he said, yeah, that. She told me about the intake coordinator. I said, the visit that was scheduled for that Saturday. Yeah. Gavin sighed. It was a big deal. She was freaking out about it for weeks. Gavin, I asked, pressing gently, did she tell the housing people that I lived there, or that I was a co-parent? He hesitated. Gavin, please, I am holding a legal letter that says I owe $12,000 I didn't borrow. I need to know the truth. She might have embellished. Gavin said, she put you down as a contributing household member on the initial application. She said it was the only way to meet the income threshold. She figured since you helped out with money sometimes, it wasn't technically a lie. It is technically fraud. Gavin, I know, he said miserably. I told her not to do it, but she said you wouldn't mind. She said you loved the kids and would do anything to help them get a yard. I closed my eyes. They had weaponized my love. And the letters? I asked. The reference letters? What letters? My mom mentioned she needed reference letters for the application. Did she ask you for one? Yeah. Gavin said, she asked me to write one confirming that her support network was reliable. She asked me to specifically mention you. When? I asked. When did she ask you for that? Let me check my email. I heard clicking in the background. My breath caught in my throat. Here it is, Gavin said. September 15th. She sent me a template to sign. September 15th. That was a full week before I booked my trip. 3 weeks before the emergency weekend, she had been planning to use me as the centerpiece of her application for a month. The work retreat excuse was a total fabrication she invented the moment I said I was going away, because she couldn't tell me the truth, that she had already committed identity fraud on the housing application. Gavin, I said, can you forward me that email? Haley, I don't want to get her in trouble. She is already in trouble. Gavin, she is suing me. If I can't prove she is lying, she is going to ruin my credit and my career. Please, for Leo and Sophie, if she gets this house by fraud, and they find out later, she will be evicted. The kids will be homeless. We have to stop the lie now. He was silent for a moment. Okay, he said. I am sending it. I refreshed my inbox. From Brianna Hale. To Gavin Mercer. Date, September 15th, 2026. Subject, reference letter template. Urgent. Gavo, please sign this and send it back. I need it for the Redwood file. I already put Haley down as the secondary contact, so just make sure you emphasize that she is around all the time, if they think I'm doing this alone. They won't approve it. Attachment. Letter _ support. Docs Yex. I opened the attachment. To whom it may concern. I am writing to confirm that Brianna Hale has a robust and consistent support system. Her sister, Haley Watson, is an integral part of the household dynamic. providing financial and logistical support on a weekly basis. I stared at the screen, integral part of the household dynamic. She had stolen my identity twice, once for the loan and once for the house. I wasn't a person to her. I was a resource. I was a credit score and a resume that she wore like a skin suit to pass inspection. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. It was heavier than the grief I had felt at the diner. It was solid. It was useful. I forwarded the email to Dylan Kessler. Subject: Evidence of premeditation and housing fraud. Dylan, look at the date. She planned the emergency weeks ago. The housing application lists me as a resident/contributor without my consent. This is why she smeared me to HR, to discredit me in case the housing board called me for verification. I set the phone down. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Brianna had made a fatal error. She thought that because I was the nice sister, I would never burn her. She thought I would absorb the blow, pay the debt, and apologize just to keep the peace, but she had pushed too far. She had threatened my job. She had threatened my financial future. She had threatened my mother, and worst of all, she had used my love for her children as the bait for a trap. I wasn't going to just defend myself anymore. I went back to my computer. I opened a new document. Affidavit of Haley Watson. I started typing. Haley Watson, swear under penalty of perjury that I have never resided at 420 Cedar Lane. I have never agreed to be a co-applicant for housing at Redwood Ridge. I was not present in the country on February 14, 2018. I typed until midnight. I outlined every text, every date, every lie. I was building a wall of facts that her tears couldn't wash away. At 12:30, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the building app. Message from management. Complaint received. I clicked it, my heart jumping. Dear Ms. Watson, we have received a complaint regarding an unauthorized sublet in your unit. A claim has been made that you are allowing non-residents to stay in your apartment for extended periods in violation of your lease. Please contact the leasing office immediately. I laughed. A short, sharp sound in the quiet apartment. She was retaliating again. She must have sensed that Mom was wavering, or maybe she just needed to turn the screws tighter. She was calling my landlord now. She was trying to make me homeless because she was afraid of being homeless. It was pathetic. I replied to the management email immediately. Dear management, this complaint is false and retaliatory. It originates from a family member with whom I am currently in a legal dispute regarding identity theft. I live alone. I have no subletters. I can provide security camera footage from my doorbell to verify this. Please note that this individual has also harassed my employer. I will be filing a police report regarding this harassment tomorrow. I hit send. I wasn't afraid of the email. I was almost glad she sent it. It was one more brick in the wall I was building around her. She was flailing. She was striking out blindly at every system she could find. HR, the law, housing, my landlord. She was trying to break my world, but she forgot that I was the one who built my world. I laid every brick. I earned every paycheck. I signed every lease with my own hand. My world was solid. Hers was made of paper, and I was holding the match. The cursor blinked at the end of the drafted message in the Watson clan group chat. It was Wednesday evening, 3 days after my return from Oregon, and the silence in the digital family gathering space had become oppressive. They were waiting for me to apologize. They were waiting for the prodigal daughter to crawl back, admit she was selfish, and beg for forgiveness so the comfortable illusion of our family could be restored. I looked at the message one last time. It was not an emotional plea. It was an autopsy report. To everyone. I had written, there has been a lot of confusion regarding the events of the weekend of October 14th. I am sending this to clarify the timeline with documentation. 1. I never agreed to babysit for the weekend in question. Please see the attached screenshots of my text history with Brianna from August and September, showing no such request was made until 48 hours before my departure. 2. I did not abandon the children. I offered to pay for professional childcare or facilitate a drop-off with Gavin. Brianna refused both options. Please see the attached timestamp text from the morning of October 14th, where she states, "I am not doing that," before leaving my building. 3. The crisis, described to HR and the family, was a fabrication. There was no work retreat. There was a scheduled housing inspection for Redwood Ridge, which required a specific family optic to pass. Please see the attached email from Gavin confirming the solicitation of false reference letters. 4. I love my niece and nephew. I love this family. But I will no longer accept the narrative that I am unstable or selfish for refusing to participate in a lie. I took a breath that rattled in my chest. Then I pressed send. The message bubble turned blue. The attachments loaded. 4 distinct images that dismantled Brianna's entire victimhood complex. I put the phone down on the kitchen counter and stepped back, as if it might explode. The reaction was not immediate. For 10 minutes, the chat remained silent. I imagined them all staring at their screens, the cognitive dissonance firing in their brains. They had been told a story of a heartless sister leaving children on a doorstep. Now they were looking at receipts that showed a calculated setup. Then, the notifications began. Aunt Linda was the first. I am very confused. Brianna said you promised her. Why would she lie about that? I did not reply. The screenshot answered the question. Then Cousin Mike, the moral arbiter who had told me family comes first. Man, that is rough. The housing thing. Is that true? Then, a private message from my cousin Sarah, who was usually quiet. I always thought that story sounded weird. I am sorry. Hales, that sucks. The cracks were forming. The monolithic wall of poor Brianna was fracturing into pieces of doubt. They weren't all rushing to my side. Pride is a heavy anchor, but they could no longer blindly defend her. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered, keeping my voice steady. "Hello, Mom. Take it down," she hissed. Her voice was trembling with a frequency I had never heard before. It was pure, distilled panic. "Take it down right now. Haley, I am not taking it down." I said, "It is the truth. She will see it." Mom screamed. "She hasn't checked her phone yet. She is giving the kids a bath. But when she sees that..." "Haley, she is going to cut me off. She told me. She said if one more person takes your side, I never see Leo and Sophie again." I felt a surge of nausea, but I pushed it down. "Mom, listen to yourself. She is holding her own children hostage to force you to lie for her. That is not love. That is extortion. You are ruining everything," Mom sobbed. We almost had it calmed down. I was going to loan her the money for the debt, and she was going to tell the housing people you were just traveling for work. We had a plan. You had a plan to enable her fraud. I corrected. "I am not part of that plan." "You are selfish," Mom shouted. It was the first time she had ever raised her voice at me like that. "You don't care who you hurt, as long as you are right. You are willing to sacrifice my relationship with my grandchildren just to prove a point." I gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. "I am not sacrificing anything. Mom, you are choosing to be bullied. You are choosing to let her abuse you because you are afraid. I get that you are afraid, but I won't buy peace with my life." "What?" "I won't buy peace with my life." I repeated, "I won't pay her debts. I won't lie to her housing board. And I won't let her slander me to my employer just so you can have Sunday dinner without conflict. The price is too high. Haley, please." "I am sorry, Mom, but the post stays up." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but the guilt that usually followed a confrontation with my mother was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She had made her choice. She had chosen the role of the peacemaker, even if it meant there was no peace, only silence. I turned my phone to silent. I had lobbed the grenade. Now I had to wait for the explosion. The legal front moved with a swiftness that surprised even Dylan. 2 days after he sent the debt validation letter, the one outlining the fraudulent dates and the passport evidence, he called me at work. We got a response. He said, "Already?" I asked. I was standing in the stairwell, hiding from my coworkers. "Yeah. And it is interesting. It is not from Crestwood Pine. It is from a different firm, a legitimate one, apparently. Crestwood kicked the file back to the original debt buyer the second they smelled fraud. They don't want the liability. What does the new firm say? They say they are closing the file, Dylan said. He sounded almost disappointed. They are categorizing it as unenforceable due to documentation error. They are not admitting fraud, because that would open them up to a lawsuit. But they are walking away. They are agreeing to remove the trade line from your credit report and cease all collection activity. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 8 years. It is over, I asked. The debt collection is over. Dylan said, You don't owe the $12,000. But Haley, this confirms everything. They folded instantly. That means they looked at the original promissory note and saw exactly what we saw. A forgery. So what now? Do we sue her? We could. Dylan said, We have enough for a civil suit. Maybe even a criminal referral. But my advice? Hold. We have a win, a documented, legal win. The debt is dead. If we sue her now, we look like the aggressors. We look vindictive. Right now, she is the one flailing. Let her make the next move. She just lost her financial leverage over you. She is going to be desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. I trusted Dylan. He had the instincts of a street fighter wrapped in a rumpled suit. Okay, I said. We hold. But Brianna, as predicted, did not take the loss gracefully. She didn't attack the debt issue. She knew she was beat there. Instead, she swiveled the turret and fired at a new target, my home. I arrived at my apartment building on Friday evening to find the building manager, a stern man named Mr. Henderson, waiting for me in the lobby. Miss Watson, he said. A word? I followed him into his office. It smelled of stale coffee and floor cleaner. We received another complaint, he said, sliding a piece of paper across his desk. I looked at it. It was an email, sent from an anonymous account, but the voice was unmistakable. Subject: Safety concern. Unit 4B. I am a concerned neighbor. I have noticed a high volume of short-term guests in Ms. Watson's apartment. I believe she is running an illegal Airbnb operation. Strangers are coming and going at all hours, compromising the building's security. Given the strict lease terms regarding subletting, this needs to be addressed. It was almost laughable. I was the most boring tenant in the building. I lived like a nun. Mr. Henderson, I said, looking up, I don't run an Airbnb. I don't have guests. I was out of town last week, which I told the doorman. We have to investigate. Mr. Henderson said, The board is very strict. If you are subletting, I am not. I cut in, and I can prove it. I pulled out my phone. I opened my Ring app. I have a doorbell camera. I said, It records every entry and exit. I can give you the login for the last 30 days. You will see me leaving for work. You will see me coming home. You will see the cat sitter. And you will see my sister, Brianna Hale, attempting to drop off her children unannounced on October 14th. That is it. No strangers, no guests. Mr. Henderson looked surprised. You have logs? Everything is archived in the cloud. I said, I will email you the links right now. I tapped the screen, forwarded the footage access, and looked him in the eye. Mr. Henderson, this complaint is harassment. It is coming from my estranged sister who is currently attempting to extort me. She contacted my employer last week with similar lies. I am handling it legally. But I need you to understand that this is not a neighbor complaint. It is a domestic dispute spilling over. He looked at his computer, where the email had just arrived. He clicked a few links, watching the boring footage of my empty hallway. He sighed. Okay, he said. This looks pretty clear. You are the only one going in and out. So we are good? We are good, he said. But Ms. Watson? If she causes a scene in the lobby, She won't. I said, she prefers to operate from the shadows. I walked out of the office. I wasn't shaking this time. I was angry. Yes, but I was also realizing something crucial. Brianna was predictable. She attacked systems. She attacked the structures that gave me stability, my job, my credit, my housing. She knew she couldn't hurt me emotionally anymore because I had severed the bond. So she was trying to dismantle my infrastructure. But she didn't understand that I was an administrator. I was a project manager. I lived in systems. She was fighting a bureaucrat with chaos. And the bureaucrat always has better files. I went upstairs and added the email complaint to the documentation folder. Incident log, October 24th. Event: false report of illegal subletting to landlord. Action: provided video evidence refuting claim. Outcome: complaint dismissed. I was building a fortress of paper, and every time she threw a stone, I just added another layer to the wall. That weekend, I received a text from Gavin. Can we talk? Not on the phone. Coffee? I met him at a Starbucks halfway between our apartments. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. His clothes rumpled. He looked like a man who had been sleeping on a couch for a month. He bought me a latte. We sat in the corner. She knows you sent the email, he said quietly. I said, did she scream? She threw a vase. He said, she said I betrayed the family. She said I was trying to make her homeless. I took a sip of my coffee. Are you okay? I am moving out, he said. I can't do it anymore. Haley, the lying, it is too much. He leaned in, lowering his voice. It is worse than the housing application. Haley, I went through the desk, the bills. She hasn't paid the electric in 3 months. The car payment is 2 months behind. She has been juggling credit cards, transferring balances, opening new ones in her maiden name. And the $12,000? I asked. The loan in my name? She spent it, he said, years ago. She told me she used it to pay off the wedding debt. But I found the statements. She used it for trips, clothes, the down payment on the condo she flipped. She treated it like free money because she figured she could just refinance it later. But she never did. She just left it rotting on my credit report. I said, yeah. And when the housing application for Redwood Ridge came up, she panicked. They do a deep background check. They would have found the default. So she tried to pin it on you. She called the collection agency and told them you were the one who was supposed to pay it. She thought if she created a dispute, the housing board would ignore it until she got approved. I stared at him. She triggered the collection to create a smokescreen? Exactly. She needed the debt to look like a disputed family matter rather than her own default. She was willing to destroy your credit just to buy herself another month of time. I felt a cold awe at the mechanics of it. It was sociopathic, but it was brilliant in a twisted way. And the babysitting? I asked. Why was that so critical? Gavin rubbed his face. Because she listed you as the backup payer. He said, I froze. What? On the Redwood application. He said, there is a section for guarantors and support. She listed you. She submitted a letter, forged, obviously, saying you contributed $2,000 a month to the household expenses. $2,000? I whispered. Yeah, that was the only way she qualified for the mortgage. Her income isn't high enough alone. She invented a phantom income stream coming from you. My mind raced. So the home visit, the inspector, they were coming to verify the household composition. Gavin said, if you weren't there, if you weren't acting like the dedicated, involved sister who pays the bills, the whole application would flag. She needed you to be physical proof of the lie. It clicked. The anger I had felt for weeks crystallized into understanding. She didn't just want a babysitter. She wanted an accomplice. If I had stayed that weekend, if I had smiled at the inspector and held the kids, I would have been tacitly confirming her fraud. And if she ever defaulted on that mortgage, she would have pointed to the application and said, see, Haley promised to pay. It is her fault. She was setting me up to be the insurance policy. Thank you. Gavin, I said. He looked down at his hands. I am sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to believe she had a plan. She did have a plan. I said, her plan was me. I left the coffee shop and walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, watching the traffic on the boulevard. I thought about something a woman had said to me in Seacliff Harbor. I had been sitting at a wine bar on my second night, reading my book. The owner, a perceptive woman with gray streaks in her hair, had asked me what I was escaping. I told her a vague version of the story. Sister drama. Babysitting expectations. She had nodded, polishing a glass. Honey, she had said, people who plan to use you always need you to look unreliable unless you are useful. If you are useful, you are a saint. If you say no, you are a disaster. There is no middle ground because the middle ground is where you have boundaries. I saw it now. The two tracks. Track A. I submit. I cancel my trip. I show up. I play the co-parent. I become the saint. I help her get the house. And in doing so, I shackle myself to her fraud for the next 30 years. Track B. I refuse. I go on my trip. I become the disaster. She destroys my reputation, calls HR, calls the landlord, sues me for the debt. She burns my credibility to ash so that if the housing board ever asks me about the fake income, nobody believes the unstable sister. It was a win-win for her. And a lose-lose for me. Unless I refused to play the game at all, I started the car. I knew what I had to do. I had to stop defending myself. Defending implied there was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. I had to force a confrontation, not a text war, not a phone call, a room, witnesses, and the truth. I drove home and called Dylan. It is time. I said, "What is the play?" he asked. "Mediation." I said, "We offer her a mediated family meeting. We tell her we want to settle the misunderstanding about the debt and the family conflict. We tell her we want to move forward. She won't agree to a lawyer present." Dylan said, "We don't tell her you are a lawyer." I said, "We tell her you are a mediator." Which is true, isn't it? You are certified? I am, Dylan said slowly. But why? Haley, we won. The debt is gone. Why get in a room with her? Because she isn't stopping. I said, she is going to keep throwing rocks at my windows until I expose the machine. I need her to say it. I need her to admit it in front of a neutral party. And I need my mother to hear it. It is risky, Dylan warned. It is the only way to end it. I said, set it up. Tell her we will meet at the community center. Tell her if she comes, and we can agree on terms. I will consider helping her with the transition for the kids. You are going to pay her? No, I said, but she needs to think I might. That is the bait. Dylan was silent for a moment. Then I heard him typing. I will set it up, he said. The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday at the Cedarvale Community Counseling Center. It was neutral ground, sterile, safe. In the days leading up to it, I made a decision that was harder than any legal maneuver. I decided how to handle the kids. My instinct, the angry, hurt part of me, wanted to burn it all down. I wanted to call the housing board myself. I wanted to call CPS. I wanted to expose her fraud to the world and watch her consequences eat her alive. But then I thought about Leo. I thought about Sophie. If I nuked Brianna's life, the debris would fall on them. They would lose their home. They would lose their mother to a potential criminal investigation. They would be the collateral damage in my vindication. I couldn't do that. I sat down and wrote out my terms for the mediation. 1. No financial entanglement. I will never sign a loan, lease, or reference letter again. 2. Full retraction. She writes a letter to Northline Creative retracting her complaint. 3. The children. I will continue to be their aunt. I will pay for legitimate expenses directly to vendors, school fees, medical bills, summer camp. I will never give cash to Brianna, and I will never babysit without a 48-hour notice and a confirmed backup plan. It was a path that allowed me to protect the kids without enabling the mother. It was the hardest line I had ever drawn. On Friday night, the night before the meeting, I packed a bag, not for a trip, but just in case. In case I needed to leave the city after this, in case it got ugly. I stood in my living room, looking at the documentation folder on my table. It was 3 inches thick now. It contained the death of my sisterhood, the Brianna I had grown up with, the one who braided my hair, the one who protected me from bullies on the playground, was gone. She had been replaced by a survival machine that consumed everything in its path. I grieved for her. I cried, standing there in the dark. I cried for the sister I wished I had, but I knew I couldn't save her. You can't save someone who is trying to drown you to stay afloat. I wiped my eyes, I went to sleep, and the next morning, I put on my suit, I picked up the folder, and I went to finish it. The conference room at the Cedar Vale Community Counseling Center was painted a soothing, sterile beige. It smelled of hand sanitizer and weak coffee. I sat on one side of the long oval table, Dylan Kessler next to me. He wasn't wearing his rumpled suit today. He was dressed in business casual, looking every bit the neutral mediator we had promised he would be. On the other side of the table sat my mother. She looked small, her hands clasped tightly around a travel mug. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And then there was Brianna. She had dressed for the occasion in a soft, oversized sweater and jeans, the uniform of the harried but trying mother. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she wore no makeup, highlighting the dark circles under her eyes. She looked fragile. She looked like a victim. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times, but this was the first time I was watching it from the audience rather than backstage. The mediator, a woman named Dr. Aris, who specialized in high-conflict family resolution, cleared her throat. "Thank you all for coming," she said softly. "The goal today is not to assign blame, but to establish a path forward. Haley, you requested this meeting. Would you like to start?" I opened my mouth, but Brianna cut in. "I think I should start," she said. Her voice was trembling, just enough to be sympathetic. "Since I am the one who has been hurt here." "Doctor?" Aris nodded. "Go ahead." Brianna took a deep breath. She looked at our mother, then at the mediator. She did not look at me. "I just want to say that I love my sister," she began. "I have always looked up to her, but lately—" She paused, wiping a non-existent tear from her cheek. "Lately, she has changed. She has become so cold, so selfish." She turned to look at me then, her eyes wide and pleading. "Haley, I don't know why you are doing this. I asked you for one weekend of help, one weekend, and instead of just saying no like a normal person, you ran away, you abandoned my children, and then you started this campaign against me. You are jealous because I have a family and you don't. You are punishing me for being a mom." She turned back to Dr. Aris. "She has been acting erratic for months. I tried to get her help. I called her job because I was worried she was having a breakdown. And instead of thanking me, she hired a lawyer to bully me about a loan I took out to feed my kids. It was masterful. She had taken every fact and inverted it. She was the protector. I was the aggressor. She was the struggling mother. I was the jealous spinster." Dr. Aris looked at me. "Haley?" I didn't defend myself. I didn't say, "I am not jealous." I didn't say, "I am not erratic." I opened my folder. "I appreciate Brianna's perspective." I said. My voice was low, steady, and devoid of emotion. However, the documentation tells a different story. I pulled out the first sheet. On September 22nd, I booked my trip. Here is the confirmation. On September 23rd, I told our mother. On September 24th, Brianna texted me, quote, "Must be nice." She did not mention a work retreat. She did not mention a conflict. I slid the paper across the table. On October 14th, at 6:15 in the morning, Brianna arrived at my apartment unannounced. I offered to pay for a professional sitter. I offered to facilitate a drop-off with Gavin. She refused both. She stated, quote, "You are making me do something I don't want to do." I slid the second paper. 20 minutes later, a call was placed to my employer alleging I had abandoned children on a doorstep. This was a fabrication designed to jeopardize my employment. I looked at Brianna. Her face hadn't changed, but her hands were gripping the table edge. This was not a concern for my mental health. I continued. It was retaliation, and it was followed by a legal threat regarding a debt that was supposedly incurred on February 14th, 2018. I pulled out the third document. The passport copy, on that date, I was in Mexico. I could not have signed this promissory note. The signature is a forgery. The address listed for me is Brianna's address, where I have never lived. The room went silent. The hum of the ventilation system seemed deafening. "Doctor?" Aris picked up the passport copy. She looked at it, then at the loan document. Her expression shifted from empathetic to clinical. "Brianna," she asked, "can you explain the discrepancy in the dates?" Brianna didn't flinch. It was a paperwork error. She said quickly, "The bank made a mistake on the date. Haley knows she signed it. She is just using a technicality to get out of helping me. It is not a technicality. Brianna." Dylan spoke up for the first time. "It is fraud." Brianna whipped her head toward him. "Who are you? You are supposed to be a mediator." "I am a mediator today," Dylan said calmly, "but I am also a lawyer, and I have reviewed these documents. This is not a clerical error. This is identity theft. And if you continue to pursue this debt, or if you continue to contact Haley's employer or landlord with false complaints, we will not be filing a civil suit. We will be filing a police report." Brianna's face went white. She looked at our mother. "Mom, are you going to let them talk to me like this? They are threatening me." My mother looked down at her hands. She looked terrified. "Haley," she whispered, "please, we don't need police. Can't we just fix the money part?" "We are fixing it." "Mom," I said, "by acknowledging it isn't my debt." Brianna slammed her hand on the table. "You are ruining my life," she screamed. Her mask of calm shattered. "You are doing this on purpose. You want me to lose the house. You want my kids to be homeless. I don't want them to be homeless." "Brianna," I said, "I want them to have a home that isn't built on my credit score without my permission." "You promised," she yelled. "You promised you would help me." "I promised to be a sister," I said, "not a cosigner. Not a scapegoat." "Doctor," Aris intervened. "Let's take a breath. Brianna, you mentioned a house. Is this conflict related to a housing situation? She needs the loan cleared to get into Redwood Ridge." My mother blurted out. Brianna glared at her. "Mom, shut up." "It is related," I said, "but not just the loan." I looked at the door. I invited one other person. I said, Gavin walked in. Brianna froze. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Gavin looked tired, but he walked to the table and sat down next to Dylan. He didn't look at Brianna. "Gavin?" "Doctor?" Aris asked. "Hi," Gavin said. "I am Brianna's ex-husband, and the father of the children." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I didn't want to come," he said quietly. "But Haley showed me what was happening." He placed the email on the table, the one from September 15th. Brianna asked me to write a reference letter for her housing application. Gavin said, "She asked me to state that Haley was a financial contributor to our household. She sent this request 3 weeks before the alleged emergency weekend." He looked at Dr. Aris. There was no work retreat. He said, "There was a home inspection. She needed Haley there to play the role of the financial supporter she had invented on her application. When Haley went on her trip, Brianna didn't just lose a babysitter. She lost her cover story. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the sound of a vacuum sealing. My mother stared at the email. She read the words, "Integral part of the household dynamic, financial support." She looked at Brianna. "You knew?" My mother whispered. "You knew weeks ago?" Brianna didn't answer. She was staring at Gavin with a look of pure, distilled hatred. "You lied to me," Mom said. Her voice broke. "You told me she abandoned you at the last minute. You told me it was an emergency. But you planned it." Brianna stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You are all against me," she spat. "Even you. Gavin, you are siding with her? She doesn't care about your kids. I care about them enough to stop you from using them as props," Gavin shouted back. Standing up too, "You are using them to scam a housing board. Bree, and if you get caught, where do they go?" "They go with me," she screamed. She looked at me. Her eyes were wild. "You think you won," she hissed. "You think because you have your little papers and your lawyer that you won? I am not trying to win. Brianna," I said, "I am trying to stop you." "Well, you stopped me," she said. Her voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. "You stopped the house. You stopped the loan. Are you happy?" I didn't answer. Fine, she said. If you want to be strangers, we can be strangers. She looked at our mother. If you leave with her, she said, pointing a shaking finger at me, if you walk out of this room with her, you never see Leo and Sophie again. I mean it. Mom, you are dead to me. You choose right now, her or the kids. My mother let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. She wanted me to fix it. She wanted me to apologize, to pay the debt, to do whatever it took to keep the family together. But I couldn't. I looked at my mother. Mom, I said softly, she is doing it again. She is holding them hostage. If you give in now, you are teaching her that it works. My mother looked at Brianna. She looked at the door. She looked at the email on the table. I can't lose them, Mom whispered. Brianna smiled, a cruel, triumphant smile. Good choice, she said. She grabbed her purse. We are leaving, she said to Mom. Come on. My mother stood up. She looked at me one last time. Her face was a mask of tragedy. I am sorry, Haley, she mouthed, and she turned to follow Brianna. I felt a crack in my heart so wide I thought I would die from it. My mother was leaving me. She was walking out the door with the person who had abused me, because the abuse came with grandchildren attached. Wait, it wasn't me who spoke. It was Gavin. He was standing in front of the door. You aren't taking them. Bree, he said. Move. Gavin. Brianna snapped. No, he said. I tried to be nice. I tried to co-parent. But I'm not letting you use my kids as bargaining chips. I am filing for emergency custody modification on Monday. I am submitting this email, and Haley's affidavit, and the police report about the fraud. Brianna laughed. You can't afford a lawyer. I am paying for his lawyer. I said. I stood up. I looked at Brianna. I am funding his custody case. Brianna, I am paying for the best family law attorney in the city, and we are going to ensure that those kids have a stable home, a home where they aren't used as leverage, a home where their mother doesn't commit felonies to pay the rent. Brianna stared at me. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. Because this wasn't a system she could manipulate with tears. This was money, and I had it. You wouldn't, she whispered. You wouldn't do that to your own sister. I would do it for my niece and nephew. I said. I turned to Dr. Eris, the mediation is over. I said, there is no agreement. I looked at my mother. She was standing frozen in the middle of the room, looking between Brianna and me. Mom, I said, you can go with her if you want, but know that you are walking into a cage, and I won't have the key to let you out next time. My mother looked at Brianna, who was now trembling with rage. She looked at me, standing tall next to Gavin. She didn't move toward Brianna. She sat back down. Brianna gasped. Mom? My mother put her head in her hands. Just go. Brianna, Mom whispered. Just go. Brianna looked around the room. She was alone. Her allies had defected. Her leverage was gone. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just gave me a look of pure, concentrated venom. This isn't over, she said. She turned and walked out the door. The heavy door clicked shut. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was the silence of a storm that had finally broken. Gavin sat down, putting his head in his hands. Thank you, he said to me. I looked at my mother. She was weeping quietly. I walked over to her. I didn't hug her. I sat in the chair next to her. It is going to be okay. Mom, I said. She looked up at me. Her face ravaged. She hates us. Mom said, she hates us all now. She doesn't hate us. I said, she is just mad that the controls stopped working. I looked at Dylan. He gave me a small nod, a nod of respect. We walked out into the parking lot 10 minutes later. The autumn sun was bright and cold. My mother walked beside me. She looked frail. What happens now? She asked. Now, I said, we help Gavin. We make sure the kids are safe. And we live our lives. Without her? Mom asked. Without the chaos. I said, maybe she will come back when she is ready to be a sister and not a user. Maybe she won't. But Mom, I stopped at my car. I am not the backup plan anymore. My mother looked at me. She reached out and touched my arm. Her hand was shaking. I know, she said. I am sorry. Haley, I am so sorry. I squeezed her hand. I forgave her. But I knew things would never be the same. The illusion was gone. We were a broken family now. But we were an honest one. I got into my car. I watched my mother get into hers. I watched Gavin drive away to pick up the kids. I sat there for a moment. Gripping the steering wheel, I was exhausted. I was grief-struck. I felt like I had amputated a limb to save the body. But as I pulled out of the lot, I realized something. I was driving my own car, to my own apartment, paid for with my own money. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had dropped it myself. And the silence? The silence was beautiful. Thank you so much for listening to My Sister Knew I'd Planned a Trip, Still Forced Me to Babysit, I Refused, and this was a heavy story, one that deals with the painful reality of family manipulation and the courage it takes to break the cycle. I know many of you have faced similar situations where family duty is used as a weapon. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member to protect your own peace? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more realistic, emotional dramas about justice and boundaries. Until next time, take care of yourselves.